buy the GreySheet, I commit them to my sponsor or another qualified person. I eat them no matter what, and in between I don't eat no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing I choose to do today because it is the door to the rest of my life. I grew up in a family of compulsive eaters. Food was around me all the time growing up, and I didn't really feel like I fit in. The only thing I remember feeling that I still don't understand is kind of ashamed growing up, and I don't know what that was about, or a little bit less than, not as pretty, not as smart, not as funny, and everybody, well, at least I don't remember in all the pictures, my older sister was not overweight as a little girl, but as she could reach puberty and things, she got a little bit more overweight, and everybody ate, and I loved food, but I ate slow, and I ate a lot of vegetables, and it seemed to me, at least for a while, that it was different. I can name some times that I binged, and we all used food to deal with feelings, but I don't remember it being a huge problem until I grew up, and then made mistakes in college and felt like the religion that I had at the time, that was my own and not really my family's, I didn't feel like that God was going to forgive me or love me through those mistakes, and that's when I remember turning to food. And once I turned to food, I never gave it up. And but it's interesting in retrospect because I wanted not to feel ashamed, and eating made me feel ashamed because I couldn't stop eating, and I was getting bigger and bigger, and I gained a lot of weight in college, and I didn't stop gaining weight when I got out of college, and I learned to eat really fast, and I could eat large things that were built for a family I could eat by myself. I did a lot of binging, and I could eat, wait a minute, eat more, wait a minute, eat more. I hear people talking about eating themselves into oblivion until they passed out. I never did that. I could just wait a second and I could eat some more. And I did that a lot. And I remember sitting in a chair and eating something, and I didn't like the way it tasted, and I wasn't hungry, and I didn't stop eating it, and I thought, normal people just don't do this. This is not normal behavior. So I started, and my mother and my father by that time had started going to OA, and they liked OA. And so I decided to give OA a try, and I went to OA, and I walked in that door, and somebody said this, it is not my quote, but she said she always felt like a zebra in a herd of horses, and she walked into an OA meeting, and there were all these zebras. And that's kind of the way I felt when I went to an OA meeting. At least they saw me. I felt understood. They talked about the same things that I felt, and using food as a crutch, and, sweet carbohydrates being a big deal. And so I got what they called abstinent, and I stayed that way for a while. And it was... And I tried different diets over the years, but at some point that stopped working for me. But it gave me some, before I gave it up, it gave me some gifts. And one of them was my first sponsor, who taught me that I had needs that mattered, and who taught me to stop berating myself verbally inside my head. And if I said something like, if I tripped over a step and said, "Oh, I'm so clumsy," she'd say to yourself, "I'm not clumsy, I just tripped over a step." And she had me start looking at things more black and white and not as a judgment, and that really helped me. And it probably helped me out of a marriage that I learned that I had needs that mattered, because he married somebody put on the planet to meet his needs, and sooner or later that stopped being who I was. But anyway, I met someone in that program, and I married them, and they turned out to be mentally ill. And when they were crashing, I got a sponsor, and that sponsor had me make not just a powerless list, but also a powerful list. And she had me claim everything that I could do. I could take a shower, I could do the laundry, I could feed my baby, I could get up out of bed. And she actually really saved me at that time, because when he crashed, I wanted to crash with him. And I couldn't crash with him. I had a brand new baby. And so OA taught me a lot of things that were really important, and maybe I needed to have those things to have the guts to come into this program. But that program did not give me physical recovery in the way that I needed it. It did not give me neutrality around my food. It did not make me sane with my food choices. It did not make the cravings go away. And so eventually I got out of that program, and I started just winging it, white knuckling it. And I was a pretty good white knuckler, so I could stay at about 180 something. I mean, I'm short, so 180 something is a lot for my size, but I didn't weigh 300 pounds, and I have a 500-pound woman inside me. I know that I could eat in a way that I would be one of those people that they would have to cut me out of a room when I died. There wouldn't be a coffin big enough to put me in. And so I moved on, and I white knuckled, and I went on with my life, and I found a higher power that I felt like could love me through anything. And I started going to a church that I enjoyed, and I met somebody at that church. This was years later. I got divorced the second time when my son was maybe 3, and my son was 9 when I met this man. And I met him at church, and I remember thinking, first, how good looking he was, and second, how kind he was. Good looking first, kind second. Well, I mean, the fact that he was so cute made me want to look a little deeper, and when I looked a little deeper, I noticed how kind he was. But anyway, so I had this man that I was crazy about, and eventually I moved here to be with him, and I had a job I loved, and I had a son that was just the most awesome kid ever, and I could not stop eating. I couldn't stop eating, and all of a sudden I had this life that I didn't want to lose, but I couldn't stop eating, and I knew that sooner or later that life was going to go away, because when I would binge, when I would eat things that don't work for me, I would get really, really emotional. Things that were little would become huge. I would get so tired it was hard to stay awake, and I'd get so angry I just want to punch holes in the wall, and it wasn't for anything. So on one hand, I have all this misery related to food, and on this other hand, I have all these lovely things that I don't want to give up, and it's like one or the other is gonna. And so I started talking to my higher power about what to do, and OA had been the only thing that ever works. But I knew I had to have a food plan, and OA didn't offer me a food plan that worked. I knew I needed to be accountable to a sponsor. I knew I needed to have black and white lines as to what I ate and I didn't eat. And I also knew that I could not live the way I was living anymore, because making the decision to eat or not eat was making me want to jump off a bridge. Because if I was eating, I felt so awful and I wished I wasn't eating. And if I wasn't eating, I felt so awful and I wished I was binging. And there was no answer for me. There was no right. There was nothing that gave me any peace. And so I decided, well, if I can't make a decision to get off the food, maybe I can just make a decision to stay on the food and just binge till it kills me. Because those seemed like the only options I had. And so I decided to go back to OA and try a food plan with a sponsor, and if that didn't work, then I would give into my suicidal binge. So, and that's really what it felt like to me, because it felt like every day I would promise myself I wasn't going to eat, and every day I would eat anyway. And in my head, it was like this monster that I lived with, promising me beating me to a pulp and then promising me he wouldn't beat me again. And then every day he was going to beat me again. Only it was me beating me. It wasn't anyone else doing it. It was me. And so I found an OA meeting and I came and it just turned out that it was GreySheet. And the person who talked that day had 8 years of neutrality around her food. She used those words. I had never heard the word neutrality and the word food in the same sentence before. And she said she had neutrality around her food. And then at some point someone said that they kept their food and their life separate. And so I decided that I would try it for 90 days. Because I had had a kid, I had had a mentally ill husband, I was grown, I was over 40, and there wasn't anything on this planet I couldn't do for 90 days. So, I could fast, so I thought, well, I'll just try it. I'll just do it for 90 days. And I messed up the first day because I ate one abstinent food, but I had called in a different abstinent food. I thought, oh, this is a serious food plan. But then the next day was January 7th, and I got abstinent January 7th. And I've been abstinent ever since. And there have been interesting, no matter what, through the years. But there have been a lot of gifts. And, I got married abstinently, and we found a place to have the dinner that I could order abstinent food, and there was one of the selections that people could eat was an abstinent meal. I rode the MS 150, which is a 150-mile bike ride. Yes, I'm crazy.
Whoever's on the phone, please mute.
*6.
*6. He wasn't. He wasn't my husband yet, but we were engaged and we rode the MS 150 together. And I remember calling my sponsor and saying, I don't think I can eat all these abstinent vegetables. There's too many, and having to call someone on the thing because I wanted to stay abstinent through that ride. And then my son graduated from high school, and then my son graduated from college. And somewhere in there, my best friend died. And then my son got married. And before he got married, my dad died. And that's just to tell you that there has been life and life and life. And I've taken dance lessons, and I've taught elementary music, and I write songs, and I've performed. And whatever I've done abstinently since January 7th of 2002. And so I guess a couple of years ago when I was teaching school, my husband was getting ready to retire, and he said, why don't you retire with me? And I didn't have to think about that long to say, okay, because we were young enough. We wanted to go to Mexico, and we wanted to help my mother grow old. And there's a charity down there that my parents started, and we wanted to help with that. And we love Mexico. We wanted to travel. And we wanted to do a lot of things. So I said I would retire with him. And then the day after I retired, he was diagnosed with, I'm sorry, he was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer. So instead of going to Mexico, we got a new job, and we spent our year fighting cancer, and he lost that battle last Saturday, and he died last Saturday morning. And there were lots of things that we've been through in between and all this journey. But one of the things I decided that when he got the cancer is that I needed to stay abstinent because he deserved to go through this with somebody who could be there for him on every level. I don't want to wake up 5 years from now in some food binge and feel like he died all over again because I didn't feel everything this journey takes you through when it happened. I also wanted him to get to be with somebody kind, and when I eat that sweet stuff, I can be a bitch. And he didn't deserve that. He had done nothing to deserve to have to live with somebody that I turn into when I'm on my drug. He was always kind and sweet and fun and funny. 5 minutes. And all of those things. And I just wanted to go through this journey with him really there. And so he leaned on me to help make decisions, and, I got a little bit clingy, and one time when I was getting a little bit clingy, he got annoyed with me, and that's the only time I really lost it with him on some level. And I looked at him and I said, "You need to be more patient with me. My husband is dying of cancer." And he kind of laughed. He kind of laughed, and, but the point is that when we knew it all along, because he would let me sit and cry with him and stuff, and he wasn't a crier, but I am, and always have been, and he was fine with it. And I said I was sorry, and he said, "No, we're both dealing with this. It's not just me." But one of the gifts I got from it was being able to really be there, and it's not the people that. I remember sitting at the table once and feeling like my chest was breaking open at some point on this journey, and I thought to myself, that's why they call it a broken heart. It really does feel like your heart is just splitting down the middle. And then right after that, I realized that it was going to hurt more before it was over, and that I was going to be okay. And so the last couple of weeks were the strangest, bittersweet gift, because he leaned on me, and I knew the hard parts were going to be there, but I didn't expect the gift of what it feels like to love somebody to the other side, for them to look at you like you're their safety net, that you're going to hold them up, that they don't have to be afraid because they're not going to be alone. And if they start to fall, you're going to catch them emotionally, physically. And I remember kneeling down and putting his foot in his shorts and looking up at him, and our eyes meeting. And there's this kind of intimacy that I have never had. And I got to tell you, with him, the sex was great, and the intimacy was great. But it was never like it was with me loving him to the end. And I don't think I could have done that if I wasn't abstinent. I don't think I could have felt everything and really been there and known that I held him up, and that I remember calling Grania one day just mad as hell at him, and I said in the middle of it, I don't want to hurt him with this. My feelings were hurt because he was dealing with his own stuff, and he was not putting me at the top of the list. And, I'm a human, and that particular day it was pissing me off. But I called somebody, and I talked it out, and I walked, and I don't eat no matter what, because abstinence is the door to the rest of my life. And guys, as hard a journey as this is, as painful as it is, I don't know how to tell you how painful it is. It's the price anybody pays if they're lucky enough to get to love somebody as much as I loved that man. And he deserved to have somebody sane love him. And I would not have been sane through this journey. I'd have been eating my face off if I wasn't abstinent. And I don't function well like that. So, for today, I don't eat no matter what. Abstinence is the most important thing I choose today. And I have to say, I don't think I could have stayed abstinent if y'all hadn't let me call into meetings, if you hadn't let me call you on the phone, and if I hadn't felt you holding me up. We don't do this alone. We do it in the middle of our herd. And thanks for keeping me abstinent through the biggest no matter what.